It's often said that going to bed well hydrated is better than relying on an endless supply of pills or tonics. From a medical perspective, this claim makes a lot of sense. Keeping the body adequately hydrated before sleep helps maintain stable blood circulation, making it less likely for dangerous clots to form overnight. However, many elderly people underestimate how critical hydration can be, particularly when the body has gone several hours without water. This oversight can lead to serious, even fatal, consequences, as was tragically the case for Mrs. Griffith, a 72-year-old grandmother who passed away at dawn before she could greet another day. Mrs. Griffith had always been fond of her evenings. She would enjoy a light supper around 7 p.m., followed by an hour of TV or reading. Concerned about waking in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, she made a habit of limiting her water intake after dinner. When her children reminded her to stay hydrated, she would laugh and say, "I'll be fine. I don't want to be up all night." Her family had no reason to suspect that such a simple choice might place her at great risk. She seemed healthy, aside from mild hypertension that she managed with a prescribed medication. Early one morning, a neighbor noticed that Mrs. Griffith's curtains were still drawn, even though she was usually an early riser. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Becoming anxious, the neighbor contacted Mrs. Griffith's daughter, who rushed over and found her mother in bed unresponsive. Despite emergency services arriving promptly, Mrs. Griffith had already passed away. The official cause of death was an ischemic stroke, likely triggered by dehydration, which led to thicker blood and elevated blood pressure during those early morning hours. News of Mrs. Griffith's sudden passing sent a wave of alarm through the neighborhood. Many older adults had similar habits of drinking less water in the evening, either to avoid frequent nighttime bathroom trips or simply because they didn't feel thirsty. As neighbors and friends gathered to pay respects, they also began asking questions. Why did dehydration pose such a risk? Could drinking an extra glass of water at night really prevent something as serious as a stroke? Upon hearing Mrs. Griffith's story, several local health workers took the opportunity to explain how dehydration can silently prime the body for a cardiovascular event, especially when coupled with existing conditions like hypertension or diabetes. First, doctors note that as the body ages, the thirst mechanism weakens. Many seniors do not realize they are dehydrated because they rarely feel strongly compelled to drink water. Medications for blood pressure, such as diuretics, can further reduce fluid levels by stimulating the kidneys to excrete more water. When older individuals go to sleep in this already dry state and proceed to spend 6, 7, or 8 hours without water, their blood can become more viscous. Thicker blood has a greater chance of forming clots, which can lodge in the brain's blood vessels, leading to an ischemic stroke. In Mrs. Griffith's case, her reluctance to drink water late in the evening, plus mild long-term hypertension, seemingly created the conditions for an early morning tragedy. Another factor contributing to morning strokes is the natural surge in blood pressure that typically occurs shortly after waking. The body releases certain hormones to prepare for daily activities, temporarily raising blood pressure. In healthy, well-hydrated individuals, this surge may not cause any issues. But in someone who has gone all night without enough water, these normal physiological changes can become dangerously amplified. If a clot forms in the bloodstream, it may block crucial circulation to the brain. Tragically, if a person lives alone or wakes up suddenly disoriented, valuable minutes or hours can slip away before anyone realizes they need urgent help. Many people assume that feeling a bit parched in the morning is normal, something a quick cup of coffee will fix. They don't know that mild dehydration can progress rapidly, especially in individuals with heart conditions or a history of stroke. Doctors often recommend that older adults keep a small bottle or glass of water on the nightstand, taking a few sips if they wake up in the middle of the night. It might lead to an extra trip to the bathroom, But this minor inconvenience is far better than facing a potentially life-threatening stroke. Healthcare providers also caution that caffeinated beverages, like coffee or strong tea, cannot replace water because caffeine can further dehydrate the body. Mrs. Griffith's closest friend recalled that she would occasionally mention waking up with a headache or feeling slightly dizzy if she had eaten a salty dinner the night before. She never connected these symptoms to dehydration. Over time, her children noticed she had started taking smaller drinks of water in the evening, citing the inconvenience of using the bathroom in the dark. Yet no one, Mrs. Griffith included, thought that this simple choice could set her on a path to a sudden stroke at daybreak. Now, looking back, her daughter wonders if just one extra glass of water before bedtime, or a half glass upon waking, might have changed the outcome. Medical professionals stress that hydration is only one part of a broader picture. Seniors should monitor their blood pressure regularly, especially if they're already on medication. They should also discuss whether their medication schedule can be adjusted to limit excessive overnight fluid loss. Some individuals do better if they take diuretics earlier in the day, for example, so that their body rebalances before bedtime. Furthermore, adopting a healthy diet, one lower in sodium, can help reduce nighttime thirst and lower the likelihood of fluid imbalances. Light physical activity, such as gentle stretching or short walks, improves overall circulation and helps the heart cope better with daily fluctuations in blood pressure. Another key point is the morning routine. Jumping out of bed too quickly can cause sudden changes in blood pressure, leaving a dehydrated body struggling to adapt. Doctors advise older adults to take their time, sitting at the edge of the bed for a minute or two before standing. Doing a few slow shoulder rolls or taking some calming breaths can help regulate the cardiovascular system. Keeping a small bottle of water nearby to sip upon waking is also recommended, so that the bloodstream gets replenished even before breakfast. These small actions might seem insignificant, but collectively, they can make a considerable difference in stroke prevention. There's also a social element to consider. Seniors who live alone are often more vulnerable, as there may not be anyone around to notice a change in their health. Neighbors or family members can help by scheduling brief morning phone calls or check-ins, ensuring that if someone doesn't pick up as usual, help can be sought quickly. In Mrs. Griffith's case, her neighbor only checked on her after seeing that her curtains were still closed. By then, precious time had been lost. If a quick call had been part of their morning routine, she might have received prompt medical attention at the earliest sign of trouble. Even if the outcome remained the same, her loved ones would at least know they did everything possible. For those who find themselves worrying about excessive bathroom breaks at night, balance is key. Drinking a full liter of water right before bed is not advisable, but neither is skipping fluids entirely after dinner. Healthcare providers typically recommend steady sips of water throughout the day, cutting back slightly a couple of hours before bedtime. That way, overall hydration remains sufficient without overly disrupting sleep. If nighttime urination is a major issue, discussing this concern with a doctor can lead to adjustments in medication or possibly exploring bladder training exercises. Mrs. Griffith's story underscores how easily a basic need, water, can be overlooked with dire consequences. In the wake of her passing, her children have begun placing more emphasis on hydration in their own households, reminding each other to keep water handy and track their intake in the evenings. They also encourage their elderly neighbors to do the same, sharing leaflets about stroke prevention and hydration. While they cannot change what happened, they hope their efforts might spare another family the same heartbreak. Ultimately, the lesson is that consistent hydration is not just about quenching thirst. For older adults, it's also about safeguarding the heart, stabilizing blood pressure, and reducing the risk of waking up to a sudden medical crisis. Even though each person's body is unique, the fundamental principle of maintaining proper fluid levels holds true for everyone, young or old. Often, it's these seemingly small habits, like sipping water or pausing on the bed in the morning, that can have the biggest impact on long-term health. Mrs. Griffith's quiet passing will always be a sad memory for those who knew and loved her. Yet through sharing her experience, many in her community have become more mindful about hydration. They learned that what seems like a trivial choice, drinking less water at night, could carry serious repercussions. Now, when people think about preparing for a good night's sleep, they also remember to prepare for a healthy wake-up. A simple glass of water can be a powerful shield, especially during those vulnerable early hours of a new day.